Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Black Ops Cold War in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the new Mac-10 submachine gun, which might just be the new best weapon in Black Ops Cold War, or at least the best close quarters combat weapon, or at least just one that I really like because I think it's very strong. There was a break on In Depth. I didn't cover this anywhere close to the patch coming out because I needed to take a mental health break for a few days. It just got very frustrating for me to play this game. I wasn't very happy with the patch. I wasn't happy with Rebirth Island, and I was getting increasingly negative and increasingly demotivated to work on content, so I just wanted to take a couple of days off. Feeling better now, getting back on top of it, and In Depth should be back on schedule very soon. The new Mac-10 SMG is kind of a monster despite having mediocre looking stats. The weapon is undoubtedly very strong. You've probably been killed by it many times, even if you're playing Warzone or Modern Warfare 2019 Warzone. It's a mean little SMG. It packs a lot of punch in a small case. So yeah, I think it's very good in 6v6 multiplayer and in Warzone maps, especially so of Rebirth Island since it's more close quarters combat. But let's dig into the stats and really take a close look at it. The Mac-10 bullet velocity is 200 meters per second, which is tied for the slowest in the game with the KSP. That is incredibly slow, ladies and gentlemen. That is miserably slow, comically slow. And this is where I would normally tell you you absolutely have to have some kind of barrel that boosts the velocity. But oddly, I don't normally go for this because I'm only using the Mac-10 at point blank range, in which case the bullet velocity doesn't really matter. What does matter is its damage profile. It'll kill in either 6 or 7 shots, depending on how far away you are from the enemy, with a damage profile of 27, 24 to 22. So this is overall a very low damage submachine gun. This is one of the lowest damage fully automatic weapons in the game, a pea shooter in a lot of ways. So we'll talk about its rate of fire when it comes to time to kill in a minute, but just keep in mind you'll get a lot of hit markers on the enemies before they actually die. Headshots will grant you one less shot to kill at all ranges, so it's always a good idea to go for headshots. That's a standard 1.4x multiplier. Unfortunately, with this weapon, since the base numbers are so low, and getting one headshot won't really change your time to kill. You're going to have to get multiple headshots in order to get that bonus time to kill, or time to kill reduction. The maximum damage range is 11.5 meters on this weapon, which is very short range. This is not very far at all, and honestly, you're going to start noticing the bullet velocity outside of that range too. There are shotguns that can one-shot kind of at those ranges. It's not the smallest in the submachine gun class, but it's close to it. So between the range and the bullet velocity and the damage and all that, I really wouldn't use this gun outside of about 15 to 20 meters. You'll see me doing it a little bit here on In Depth just to kind of show it off and push it and see what it can do for the purposes of making this guide. But if I were just playing me, I really wouldn't shoot at people that are very far away. It kind of wastes my bullets. Now let's talk about what this weapon does really well. It has a rate of fire of 1,111 rounds per minute, which is insanely fast. As a matter of fact, when I look at the stat chart, the only thing that's similar is it's tied with the Diamatti burst pistol, and the speed of the burst on that pistol is 1,100 RPM. So this is like having a fully automatic pistol in your Diamatti pistol in your pocket and just hammering people with it. This is a ludicrous rate of fire. This is like Black Ops 2 Scorpion rate of fire. It's really, really high up there. So when it comes time to calculating time to kill, you'll find it's actually got a pretty fast time to kill. If you're going to kill an enemy in 6 shots, that'll be 270 milliseconds, which is pretty fast. And if you're doing 7 shots, it's a little bit slower at 324 milliseconds. These are very respectable time to kill numbers. However, I want to point out that this is technically the third fastest killing SMG. Both the KSP and AK-74U will kill faster. However, when it comes to Black Ops Cold War, it's just an overall fast time to kill weapon. There aren't a whole lot of weapons that kill you as quickly as this gun, so it's definitely top tier, even if a few other weapons can outclass it. However, the Mac-10 is far more forgiving than other weapons if you're missing your shots because of that rate of fire. So for example, with the AK-74U, that does technically kill quicker up close, but if you miss one shot, you've added like 100 and some odd milliseconds to your time to kill. If you miss one shot with the Mac-10, you might not even notice it. The high rate of fire just makes it incredibly forgiving, so players will get far more consistency out of this weapon than they will with other theoretically faster TTK weapons. And you definitely see that. Even me as a more advanced player that typically likes those more complicated weapons with higher risk reward, I definitely get better average performance out of this because of its overall forgivability or forgiveness in missing shots. When it comes to handling, the Mac-10 handling stats are very normal for submachine guns. It'll aim down sights in 275 milliseconds, and it'll sprint out in 250 milliseconds. This is perfectly average for submachine guns in terms of handling. Nothing amazing, special, good, or bad about it. You would think it would be faster, but it's really not. One thing that is on a different level on this weapon is hipfire. Hipfire is god tier on this weapon, but only because of the rate of fire. Its actual hipfire, like box radius size thing, isn't any different than average. All SMGs have like except I believe the Milano have a 7 milliradian hipfire box. Assault rifles are about the same. The size of the box isn't what's important, but rather the fact that you're going to be using it in close quarters combat. It is a bullet hose to the point where it might feel like a shotgun, and experientially it has very forgiving hipfire, and I hipfire with it a lot. It also has a slightly faster than average reload time for submachine guns at about 2 seconds. That's about 10-15% faster than average for that class, which is kind of nice to have. And you should probably use a magazine attachment on this weapon considering how many bullets you'll waste. It's literally a bullet hose. It sprays bullets all over the place. You'll dump your whole mag in a fraction of a second. Get the biggest, gnarliest, best mag that you can possibly put on this little gun because it'll help you out tremendously. The Mac-10 iron sights are ultimately kind of mediocre, but it's not going to matter when you're only about 3 meters away from the enemies. I could definitely design better iron sights, but they work well enough for me up close. I don't really want to try to beam people at long ranges. Again, you'll see me try just for in-depth, just for the purposes of this show, but it's not something that I would really recommend. The Mac-10 is, in my opinion, the best rushing-only submachine gun in Black Ops Cold War. I do think that there are other more versatile SMGs in this game. I think that the MP5 is incredibly versatile. I think the Bullfrog's in a good place. I think the KSP has some very interesting time to kill properties. There are other weapons that probably work overall better in more situations, especially at long ranges or, you know, killing more than a few people at a time before you have to reload. But when it comes to raw power, bullets downstream, in your face, deleting people, balls to the wall gameplay, the Mac-10 can't be beat. It is an actual monster in close quarters combat that I think it could almost be a shotgun with the level of damage it outputs. It's crazy. So if you don't mind going truly rushing only, it's a great weapon. If you're planning to hold back and like hold power positions and head glitch, there's a million other better weapons you could use. In my opinion, you need to hard commit to getting into people's faces if you want to use the Mac-10. If you want to get great gameplay with this, you have to just throw away all sense of self and reckless abandonment and just run straight in, bullets a-flying, and it'll work great. It also shreds in Warzone. It might be a better secondary than the Modern Warfare 19 MP5. It is an incredibly strong Warzone weapon, and it's rapidly becoming the meta backup, meta secondary. We don't have exact Warzone stats yet. That hasn't come in, but my experience indicates that it has a very fast time to kill. I've probably played more Warzone than any COD game in a long time, so I kind of know it like the back of my hand. I've been keeping up with Ace and JGod's testing as well, so there's some data, some numbers coming in, and everything, both my experience and our marginal amount of numbers, indicates that it's got a fast time to kill, and it's a good backup weapon. I probably wouldn't use it as a primary. I might use it as a primary on like Rebirth Island because it's really small, but it's just great to have in your back pocket. It does delete people in Warzone. Speaking of Warzone, we'll have 3 classes to recommend today. I've got a 5 attachment class, an 8 attachment class, and a Warzone class. The 5 attachment class, the one we're going to look at first, is my personal favorite. I like using the last 5 attachments, and pretty basic ones at that. I'm going to be taking perk greed and loading down with perks for multiplayer as well. I run the SWAT 5 milliwatt laser to tighten up my hipfire accuracy as much as possible without hurting hardly anything else. Minor ADS time penalty, but I can deal with that. I'm running the Bruiser grip, interestingly, because I don't care about recoil at the range that I'm planning to use the weapon. I just want all of the movement speed bonuses and no downsides, so that's exactly what I got out of it. I used the very last magazine, Salvo 53 round fast mag. It boosts ammo capacity, reload time, reload quickness, absolutely everything. Huge cost to aim down sights time. I usually avoid this type of attachment, but I think it's worth it on this weapon considering how many bullets I'm dumping downstream. Then I'm going to use the airborne elastic wrap, mostly so that I can drop shot in multiplayer when I need it. It does kind of stink that it hurts my sprint to fire time because that's very important on this gun, but I'm going to fix that up a little bit with the wire stock. And I'm aware that there are other stocks that help that sprint to fire time more, but they make hip fire so wide it's not quite as useful. I'll take the little flat bonus here with no penalties. It's a very simple class. It's not super advanced. Statistically, it's probably not even a full bonus class, but it works really well for just getting in people's faces and maintaining as much speed on the weapon as possible. And that's pretty much what I've done with it throughout most of the gameplay that you've seen here today. Moving along to the 8 attachment class, this one's kitted a little bit more like an assault rifle than anything else to kind of hedge some of the weaknesses and kind of strengthen them a little bit. So I'm going to run the Microflex LED, that's my favorite red dot sight. Then we're going to be running the SOCOM Eliminator to get rid of a little bit of muzzle flash, but also help the recoil as much as possible. We do take a horizontal penalty. I run the reinforced barrel, which gives me effective damage range and bullet velocity with only minimal penalties to my moving speeds. It's kind of the opposite philosophy here. I'm just trying to add a little bit more range to the weapon. I do run the SWAT 5mm laser again because I'm going to be hip firing people when they get close to me. We'll be running the field agent grip instead of the bruiser grip so that I can tighten up the horizontal recoil, make it much easier to hit people at range. The same magazine, which is just lovely as far as I'm concerned. The same airborne elastic wrap for drop shotting, which you'll probably be doing more on this ADS class. And then the same wire stock. So it's essentially the same class, except we've added a few barrels and recoil reducing attachments. And I don't think that this one works as well. I've seen other people get better results out of this, but in my hands, it's a little bit too potatoey. I would just rather have a rifle or an MP5 or something for all the trouble, but it can work if you enjoy the fast rate of fire weapons. Then finally, since they're integrated now, I'm going to briefly share with you a Warzone class for this weapon that works well with me. I like running the agency suppressor, the GRU 5mm laser sight. I'll run the wire stock, the big magazine, and a field agent grip to kind of tighten up my recoil a little bit. And this is kind of effectively my MP5 replacement. I do run a suppressor so that I can stay off the radar, and it's all about just getting in people's faces and hosing them down with hip fire or minimal ADS. It works extremely well. And in my opinion, if you didn't listen to anything today, I think the biggest takeaway that you should hear, especially for Warzone players out there, is that this weapon slaps in Warzone. You should really consider leveling it just to have it ready to go for Warzone because it makes an excellent backup for your overkill classes. Guys, that is all for this episode of In Depth. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful, and if you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.